That brings me to something I just wanted to get you to talk about a little bit is like how you define art or being an artist and art in general.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I know for me, I have a hard time calling myself an artist just because of mostly the medium where a lot of my finished stuff ends up on. So how would you define art?
I love that you asked me this question. Right? I can be like, okay, that was a performance. I just made that, right? All I did was like shake my head a little bit, right? But I can claim that that was a performance, right?
Yeah.
And nobody else can say that isn't art. Now, what we can do all day long is debate whether we think that is good art or bad art based on like our own personal preferences or even talking about art historically, right? There's art historians and people who talk about this all day long. So you can't tell me that what I did isn't art, but we can talk all day long about whether it's good art or bad art.
I'm just trying to be somebody. So make a way, make a way, make a way. I'm just trying to be somebody.
Hello, and welcome back to Trying to Be Somebody, a video podcast that interviews mostly BIPOC artists about their creative careers with the goal of helping you. I'm Hallease, endeavoring to persevere, as always. So today's episode is a bit more interactive. We'll be interviewing Mark Menjivar, a socially minded artist based in San Antonio, Texas. So whether you're listening or watching the podcast today, go ahead and hit pause and grab something to take notes with. Maybe it's your phone, notes app, your tablet, or even just a traditional analog journal. Pause now, grab it, and then come back. And I want you to do that because Mark is actually going to walk us through a creative exercise for the first part of this podcast episode. Something I often hear people say is, my life's not interesting, I'm too boring to start a channel, some variation of that. And it's just not true. A lot of times it's about realizing and understanding your own unique perspective of your life. And so Mark is going to walk us through an exercise to help you to begin to explore that. For those of you listening, whenever I want you to pause, I'll bring the music up and it'll go a little quiet. For those of you watching, you'll see some sort of graphic to let you know that you can pause. After we get through the exercise, take a few minutes, meditate on it, and then continue with the podcast episode. Of course, I interview Mark about his artistic career. He has done quite a bit in what I would consider a short amount of time, and he has a wealth of knowledge of getting artistic projects funded. He be writing grants all day, every day. Okay? So without further ado, let's get into the podcast episode. Everything is picking up levels.
Oh, perfect.
Everything's recording.
Good.
Life is good. When I think of an artist, like when I think of someone who's multidisciplinary and doing a lot of different things in varying mediums, I think of someone like Mark, who has gotten projects funded completely and has gotten to have his art premiere in a lot of different locations. Some of those locations include the Puerto Rican Museum of Art and Culture, NPR, TED, the San Antonio Museum of Art. Oh, and my favorite place, the Rothko Chapel, which is really neato. He is a multidisciplinary artist, and he has also just recently made tenure at Texas State University.
Yeah.
So,
Big
yes.
deal. Yeah.
I'm excited to have him here. Say hello, Mark.
Thank you,
don't say
Hallease. I am just super excited to be here.
Yay.
Excited for all of y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, I have so much respect for all the work that you do. So really it is an honor.
Thank you. So I wanted to have Mark on the podcast today because Mark is, as I said, a professor. And I really appreciate a lot of your art because it's always art with, I would say, like more purpose. It's not very... not to say that art can't be self-gratifying and that it shouldn't, because make what you want to make.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that a lot of your art always comes from a space of how can we like study ourselves? How can we study the human existence or the human experience? Which I'm really big on with a lot of the vlogs and conversations I try to start on the channel. I've also gotten to like sit in on Mark doing like different exercises with different organizations to get them to think differently about their mission statements and things like that. So I wanted to have you on to walk us through an exercise to get people to start to think about their own story. Because something that y'all be saying to me, and I'm like, stop, is a lot of people will say to me that they don't have a story to tell, or that their life isn't very interesting, or that they're thinking about starting a channel, but they feel like their life's too boring. And I'm just like, it's not You just need to change your perspective.
Yeah. So many of the projects that I work on and do come from my own life, right? From knowing who I am and where I've been, and they come out of my life rubbing up against the life of other people or against the historic events, right? And finding meaning in those areas, and then like paying attention to those, and then ideas start to come out, right? And then it's like trying to keep up with the amount of the ideas that come out. But a lot of people, right? Work will start maybe in their imagination, which is great. And for me, it starts in the real world, and it starts with examining my own history or the history of the places where I find myself. And then my imagination can begin to engage with those things.
Yeah, totally. I love that idea because a lot of times, like a lot of the different vlogs I create is all about just noticing the historical relevance, whether it be of my family or someone else's family or of our culture and society, and then letting my imagination run wild or just asking a simple question about that history, and the journey becomes, or the story becomes, trying to answer it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, cool. What we're going to do it today?
Yeah.
So one of the things for me that has been really important has been knowing my own family history, right? And realizing that all of us have a story, right? In our families, we all have a migration story. And some of those stories are closer than others, right? Some of us can our family has held on to those stories and can tell them from beginning to end or from end to where we are now. And some of us, right, we have a hard time even knowing where our families came from, right? Or even going back, those histories have been erased or taken from us in different ways. And so there is an exercise that I like to do to help us begin to engage with our own migration stories.
Awesome. I'm ready.
So you ready? You ready?
I'm ready. Yes.
Okay, so what I want to invite you to do is to make a list, write down every place that you have ever lived, starting with where you are now and going as far back as you remember.
All right.
And it can be a city, it can be a house, it can be a nickname for a place, whatever it is.
Okay. Oh, man. I've only written 2 places, and I'm already like, ooh, so many stories coming out of that, Philly,
Yeah.
So many. I think that's good.
Okay.
All right.
So now, adding directly onto that list, don't leave any spaces or anything. I want you to write down every place that your parents have ever lived. So think back, and you can just mush them all together.
All right.
But every place that your parents have ever lived. And I always try to say, try to think about them, but also don't get stuck so hard on trying to remember just one where you're it keeps you from going on.
Yes.
So every place your parents have ever lived.
I think I got everything.
Okay.
Yes.
So now, adding directly onto that list, write down every place your grandparents have ever lived.
I know from my family specifically, as far as grandparents go, it's going to be pretty limited. Just because of the nature of the times.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I was like, yeah.
And then you can keep adding on to that. You kind of may have figured this out already now. But every place your great-grandparents have ever lived. So where have you lived, your parents have lived, your grandparents have lived, your great-grandparents. And then adding on to that, your great-great-grandparents.
That might be across a pond, potentially. I'm not sure. Right? No. Maybe. No. No, we've been here a minute. Just kidding. But I just probably
And
don't
then
know.
onto that, great-great-great-grandparents. So go all the way back as far as you can go, right? As many greats as you can.
All right.
And then, do you have the list?
I think, I'm good. I have my list.
So what I want to invite you to do now is to look back over that list, and in between each of those spaces exists a migration story, right? There's a reason that the people or the moved from one place to another. There's factors that push them to that place, or maybe it pulled them to that place. And a migration story exists in between each one of those places on your list. And so I want you to just spend some time thinking about those migration stories.
Yeah, and I think this is actually a really important exercise, I feel, because as you saw, even with mine, the second place, I was already like, I got some stories from that place. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Even though I wasn't there for very long.
Yeah.
I just lived there for 4 or 5 months, but it was enough time to be like, ugh.
Exactly. And I think that those stories, they have right, the factors that pushed and pulled us can contribute to our own stories now, right? And knowing our past can help us begin to know where we want to go into the future. And there's stories on there, right, that are celebrated by our families, right? They're told every time we get together around a dinner table, or they're alluded to. And then there's stories on there that nobody wants to talk about, right? That they're
Right.
painful, right? And they're traumatic. And those waves of trauma go throughout generations as well. And so I always think it's important just to acknowledge those things too.
For those of you who may or may not watch the channel, if you're new here, subscribe. But for those of you who may or may not watch the channel, last year I did a piece for YouTube Originals where I basically did the film version of this exercise, trying to go back as far as I could across 3 generations of my family. And the whole reason I even came up with that idea was because I had watched this Baldwin quote where he talked about how long do I have to wait for progress to happen?
Yep.
In my mother's time, my sister's time, my uncle's time, nieces and nephews' time, which time does it happen? And it got me thinking about my own family and what we've had to endure, whether it be, directly on us or just by the institutions that be, how they've had to work through it. And from there, I discovered, listening to my mom and dad talk about growing up through desegregation, not even realizing that I had like essentially a primary source account of this really big historical shift in our country, Point of the story, talk to your elders. You can find so much amazing storytelling content in there along with this exercise. So have you ever used this idea for different projects that you've worked on?
I think that before I even landed on this as an actual exercise, I was doing this in my day to day in kind of it was seeping into my art practice before I even formalized this kind of exercise. And one example of that is back in 2011, my grandfather was ill, trying to battle cancer, and he was dealing with his own legacy in his life, and he started sending me photographs that he had made over really a 30-year period of his life, and I ended up pulling those together into a book that I took to his funeral, and I invited people at the funeral to write onto the pages of the book to add context and understanding to those photographs. And then I came back in the studio, pulled it apart, rescanned all those pages, and then laid out a new book, which was those photographs with the people's handwriting on it, and then also a transcript from a 6-hour oral history that I did with him. Wow. So, right, in thinking about how does his story guide my parents' story, which then leads into my story, which then leads into my kids' story, right, and kind of how all of those things are linked together generationally. So I think that, that's just one project. I mean, there's a whole nother project. My father's from El Salvador, and I lived there during the Civil War in the 80s. And so going back and exploring my own family history and own childhood has been a whole nother project that I've done.
Yeah.
So
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, a quick break to go over a few announcements. If you've been hanging with the podcast for a couple episodes, you know the drill. First of all, if you're listening to this podcast, wherever you're listening, please rate us there. 5 stars is preferred, but I am always open to criticism, just saying. Just be constructive with it, okay? Be constructive. Second thing, if you're watching the podcast here on YouTube, please like this video and engage with it down below in the comments. Let me know what you thought about the exercise. Did it change anything for you? Please engage. That really helps algorithmically. And of course, I really enjoy the community online. I love talking to y'all. And then finally, if you want to take things a step further and support the podcast a bit more, join the Patreon, patreon.com/Hallease. There you get early access to videos, behind the scenes content of everything we're doing here at Stumblewell to create content, and it's just a good time. The Patreon producers are holding us down. We appreciate you so much. And with that, let's get back to Mark. So something I wanted to talk to you about as well is considering that you've been a multidisciplinary artist for 20, 30?
Oh, you're kind. No, so my background is actually in social work, right? I'm a licensed social worker and was working with individuals experiencing homelessness here in the United States and in South America, and then came into the arts through documentary practices in 2005. So 15 years that I've been making work. Yeah,
that
so
says
long
a lot.
time,
well, that still says a lot though, because to
Yeah.
me you seem like you have such a wide breadth of projects that you've worked on over the years. That to me it was this guy feels like he's been doing this for so long. But 15 years,
Yeah.
it's you blink and that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it goes by so fast, in lots of ways. But I always think it's a lot of like even my life and the way of working has been like one step, like not knowing where I'm going, but taking and trusting like the next step, right? Because it was like my intro into the arts was through photography, right? And for 5 years, like really that's all that I did was like straight photo. And then I started to learn about, oh, there's other kinds of practices, or there's artists that are working like across all of these, not just like mediums, but also disciplines, right? And so sometimes people look at the work that I do and they're like, are you a journalist or a sociologist or a social worker? Like, what are you? And they're like, we don't, I'm not trying to like hurt your feelings. I'm like, no, I'm like, I love that. I like going across all these different mediums. But for me, it also always starts with the idea, and then right the concept and that idea, and then from the idea asking like, oh, how can I like manifest this in the world? And like, does that need to be a video? Does it need to be a participatory project structure? Does it need to be a book? Does it need to be a photograph? And then kind of going from there. But it always starts off with the idea.
That's interesting that you talk about this idea of like art being like your art being multidisciplinary, in that you have an idea and then you try to figure out what medium will work best in showcasing that idea. And that brings me to something I just wanted to get you to talk about a little bit, is like how you define art, or being, I guess, being an artist and art in general.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, I know for me, I have a hard time calling myself an artist just because
Yeah.
of mostly the medium where a lot of my finished stuff ends up
Yeah.
on, which is the internet, which is still, I think, very much, even though it's not old, but even though it's established, that's a
Yeah.
better way to put it. It's very established. It still is not very much, what's the word? Not accepted, but just like, it's still a very new medium
Yeah.
for having your art be in a space.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still learning how to call myself an artist.
Yeah.
So how would you define
Oh, I could
art?
talk. Oh, I love that you asked me this question because I think, right? So, like, an artist is somebody who makes art, right? And I believe that anybody can make art. So anybody really can be an artist. And so, like, right? I can be like, okay, that was a performance. I just made that, right? All I did was like shake my head a little bit, right? But I can claim that that was a performance, right?
Yeah.
And nobody else can say that isn't art. Now, what we can do all day long is debate whether we think that is good art or bad art based on like our own personal preferences, or even talking about art historically, right? There's art
Yeah.
historians and people who talk about this all day long. So you can't tell me that what I did isn't art, but we can talk all day long about whether it's good art or bad art.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the way that I think about art or what art is has dramatically changed over the years. When I was a kid growing up, I didn't go to museums. Like, we weren't making art at home or doing anything like that. And so if you asked me, like, what is art, I probably would have said, like, it's like a sculpture or a painting or even a film or something like that, where it's like this object. And really what I'm was talking about is like mediums, right? It's
Yeah.
the things that you use to make it. And then I think like as the years went on and I started making work and doing that, I think I really started to think about art as like an intentional act. That like intentionality had to have something inside of it, right? That you're actually deciding to do something. And so, I think for years I really was like, okay, yeah, this is what art means to me. But over the past, 3, 5 years, I think I've been thinking about it in a new way. And I really think that art is about the creation of meaning. And so it's about creating a meaningful experience or that people can engage in. And that can happen by looking at something on a wall, but it can also happen in a conversation like we're having now. It can happen through taking a walk with somebody together. It can happen over a shared meal together. And so that my idea of how I think about art has really expanded out from that to just like, yeah, where do you locate meaning in your life? And that could be art too.
Where do you locate meaning in your life? And I feel like that's a quote right there. But I feel like, yeah, when I look at some of your other art projects, I went and stalked your website like a good producer. But when I look at some of your art projects, especially the one, can you talk about the one that you did? I believe it was for NPR. I'm not sure, but you took pictures of fridges.
Oh, yeah.
The inside of people's fridges. Can you talk about that project a little bit?
Totally can. And so I didn't do it. It wasn't a commission project at all. Thankfully, a bunch of different organizations featured it over the years. But that was the very first like major project that I ever worked on. It was like back in 2007. I was actually working with another artist on a documentary about hunger and food insecurity in the United States. So like as I was thinking about all those things combined with like my background in social work, I was trying to find something to do to explore hunger and food insecurity visually. And
Yeah.
so like I tried all these things. I was like photographing like food items cut in half. I was photographing meals after people had eaten. I was really just trying all these things. And one night I walked into my kitchen and opened up the refrigerator and I started looking in. I was doing that thing where it's like I wasn't really hungry, but I was just more bored, right? So I'm just kind of like staring at it. And I ended up going and getting a camera and making an image of it. And when I got the film back, because I would shoot with a 4x5 view camera, the ones where you get underneath the cloth, all
Oh,
old
okay.
fashioned.
Old school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when I got the film back, I was really struck by what I was seeing. It was like a still life, in many ways. And so I did it once, and then a lot of times what I do in my projects is if I'm interested in something, I just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And over the next like 4 or 5 years, I ended up photographing over 100 refrigerators from people in over 35 cities across the country. And there were people like from penthouses on Fifth Avenue in New York to people that were just getting off the streets. And so tons of diversity in all the ways that you can think of. And then thankfully the exhibition started traveling. And so it ended up traveling to over 22 cities across the country. And for me, the exhibitions was a huge shift in my art practice because what I would do is like we would put the images up on the wall, but then I would reach out to organizations in the community, either food banks or food justice organizations, and invite them to come into the space and use it for their own purposes. And what I found is that I started caring more about what was happening in the space than I did what was actually hanging on the walls. And so,
Yeah.
and what I didn't know at the time is that there's a term to describe that kind of art practice. It's called social practice, where projects that are focused more on collaboration and participation for people.
Because you were already working on things around food security. That was already
Yeah.
where your
Oh
headspace
yeah.
was. And then you look in your own fridge, and then just by having that sort of like where like you were already in a certain headspace, and that leaned into the next project so
Yep.
seamlessly. Like that happens so often, I
Yeah.
feel, for a lot of artists.
Yeah.
And then this idea of also like the way you can like the fact that you've had your background in social work, so you can already use art to send a specific message,
Yeah.
which I think is so powerful. Anyway, I'm fangirling over here.
One funny thing about that project too is, and I joke that I use this as like the standard for whether I should pursue a project or not, is I remember telling my mom, she was like, "What are you working on?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm making photographs of the interiors of people's refrigerators." And she was like, "Baby," she was like, "that is not a good idea." And so, so we laugh all the time now, right? So it's like anytime I have a new project coming up, I call her up and tell her about it. And if she's like, I don't know about that, then I usually try to pursue it. I love my mom. She's amazing. You know what I mean? But it's a good standard. And a lot of people, right? I was doing that project and like, I worked on it for like almost 2 years without showing it to anybody because it was one of those things people were like, "You're doing what?"
Yeah.
People were questioning it. But I knew that like from what I was seeing from the film coming back and also the experiences that I was having with people,
Yeah.
where I felt like in my gut, in my belly, that there was something there. So
Yeah, I think that's also so important that you should try to, which is one of the reasons I have a YouTube channel, is originally it was there, and to this day, even though I'm monetizing it, trying to, I still try to just explore things.
Yeah.
Just try to follow your intuition and see where it goes. And one of the main ways I do that, like a lot of people with film in particular, they think they have to have like a whole scripted narrative and know exactly where the project is going to go. And don't get me wrong, budgetarily that helps to do
Yeah.
all of that stuff. But
Yeah.
sometimes you do need to just allow there to be space to explore something. Like something I do a lot of times if I want to put a vlog out is I'll actually just film everything.
Yeah.
Like I'll just have my camera around, and if I see something, the way the light is hitting the leaves,
Yeah.
or I kind of want to like figure out how to get this walking shot a certain
Yeah.
way, I'll film myself doing all sorts of things for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, a month. And then in editing, I'll come and try to figure out, is there even a story
Yeah.
here? What is there? And a lot of times that story will depend on the mood I'm in when I'm in the,
Yeah.
when I'm sitting there editing and trying to put stuff together.
Oh yeah.
Does that happen to you at all? Like similar things or no?
I think that one of the things that was as I was hearing you just talk about that, I think something that I was reminded of is that I try to not like be really critical of myself or of the work while I'm making it. Like I try to jump in and it's like I have to follow that instinct or that voice or that thing, right, and make the work. But if I'm like, being really critical of myself while I'm doing that and kind of critiquing the work, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, then it's just like, it's not very beneficial, right? Because I'm like, oh, like those little voices that chirp in your head, like this idea is stupid, or like, why the hell are you even doing this?
Yeah.
Like you can't listen to that. So it's like you make the work and then you come into the editing suite or you come into the studio, you put stuff up on the wall, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, this does have legs. Or you're like, oh, that's the worst idea ever, And that's, for me, sometimes I'll have ideas and I write things down a lot. Like I keep journals and have for a long time. And it's like I'll write down an idea and I'll be like jamming for like an hour or two and being like, this is the best project ever. And then it's like I come back to it a week later and I'm just like, what was I even thinking? It's like, what, really? Like I can't even believe that I spent that much time. But that leads to the next thing, And then there'll be sometimes I'll write down a small little idea and then like a year later, 18 months later, I'll be like, oh, wait a minute, there was that thing that I was thinking about, and this perfectly ties into this idea or to this venue or to this installation. And so you kind of bring it along with you.
Yeah.
But I try to not like criticize myself too much while I'm doing it, because that's just like torture,
Yeah.
You're like, oh, so which is this like, I think it connects to what you were saying about editing, right? So it's like you capture everything, and then when you get into editing, you can be like, oh, okay, I can chop this thing this way or that way, or pull this over here, or add this thing in here and do
Exactly.
that. So,
Yeah, it's a process. I feel like, and a lot of like, I know for me, if you looked into one of my hard drives right now, you would see terabytes of footage that has never and will probably never see the light of day. I've had whole ideas for, abstract short films or abstract documentaries, all that kind of stuff, and then got all the way into editing and was just like, this ain't it, and just like scrapped it. But I like, with foresight, you end up seeing how that idea ends up working its way into another piece, maybe as a different, smaller aspect, or it's the jump off to get you to think about something else even differently. Or what happens with me a lot on the technical side of things, I'll do an idea, it doesn't work very well, but technically I learned something new, and it ends up being the thing that helps
Shifting
me
it in.
get another project done, and it looks way better because I was flailing about over here on this one idea.
But I love the way you edit. And also one of the things I love about how you edit is how you bring your own story and your own self into your pieces so much. And different like layering of voices, right? So you can have your parents inside of that speaking, or your grandparents speaking about it, but then you're also layering your own narrative and making the connections between it. It's very difficult to do, and you do it really, really well. So
I think a lot of that is just from watching a lot of YouTube. You learn how to do it.
yeah.
Okay, so something else, I wanted to talk about a few other ideas that people can work through when they're
Yeah.
when they feel like they're in a rut, they don't feel like they have any ideas.
Yeah.
Something that you had mentioned before was this idea of making concentric circles.
Oh, yeah.
Can you walk us through that
Yeah,
exercise?
totally. So sometimes what I think about is, right, if you have like a central idea of something, we'll take any subject. Do you have any subject that pops off the top of your head?
Oh man, I don't know what pops in my head right now. There's so many things I'm working on. It's kind of hard to think about one thing.
So the concept of luck, we'll
Okay.
say, I'll
Okay.
just throw that out there. So this is actually a project that I worked on, right? But it's like, so, right, if I'm thinking about like, about the concept of luck or the idea of luck, it's like, okay, I can start to think about it from like maybe from like a belief standpoint. It's like, does it even really exist, But then I can also like take a step back from it and be like, well, how does luck begin to like function inside of like cultures? Okay, so then you begin to look at that, then you can like start to pick that apart and be like, okay, in a North American context, this is how people talk about it. But in South America, right, specifically in Bolivia, like Andean cultures may look at it this way. And then you're like, okay, and then I may take a step back from there and then begin to look at it in a completely different view. But then it's like kind of like starting with the main idea, taking a step back, taking a step back, taking a step back. But then the cool thing is that you can then like hone in, you can go all the way deep down inside of an idea too. But I think that it helps me to begin to think about things very like systematically sometimes. And then it's like, once I see that thing existing systematically, then I can figure out ways like, oh, how do I then break the system, right? How do I
Yeah.
then bust out of that? And sometimes I also think about it in this way too, is that like even with the refrigerator project, right? It was like I worked on that for like 4 years, and there was a certain point that I was like, I am done with this project, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like walking away, right? I'm like trying to get out of here, and then all of a sudden I like turn around and I look back at it, and I'm like, oh, I see from like a different angle, and I'm like, oh, well, what about that? Okay, well, this, I see from this angle. Now I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna end up doing a series of audio recordings of people eating their favorite comfort foods, right? Because there was like this thing where I was like, oh, it's like the juxtaposition of like a comfort food with the sound of like chewing and eating was so like disjointed, right? It was bad. And then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get away from it. Like I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm like, okay, I'm done with food issues. I don't want to do it. And then I read an essay, right, written by somebody, and I'm like, oh gosh, this makes me think about this. And so then I go on and do a whole nother year-long project with youth around farming, right? There's like, it's like, so I think about it that way as well. Maybe not even just concentric circles, but it's like when you're kind of on the journey, like don't forget to look back over your shoulder to see like what you've just done, where you're coming from, and how that can inform where you're going and what you're doing.
Definitely. Another thing I do a lot that I think usually helps is I ask a lot of questions. Like a
So good.
lot. Like especially, and I actually learned this from doing Say It Loud, definitely. The PBS show that I worked on in 2019. So a lot of the episode topics, like they would say to us, hey, we think you should make a topic about Black beauty. Like how African American culture has shifted in regards to hair and makeup and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's a huge
Yeah.
like undertaking of a topic to try to fit into, probably at most a 15-minute video.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times with the writers in there, we would talk about it more from like, well, what's a question we have that relates to this topic? So kind of like concentric circles, but starting from the outside with this super broad thing, Black beauty from whatever to whatever time period. And then being like, okay, well, why do I like wearing my hair the way I do? Like, why do I prefer having my hair this way versus that way? And then, thankfully, having the resources to have a researcher who can kind of explain the historical context of how we've gotten to where we are, and you build the narrative around that. So many things I've done have been around just like asking a really basic question, and then the film itself or the writing is all actually the journey of finding the answer, not actually knowing it, but documenting, scripting, finding it in some way.
Totally.
So,
So
yeah.
good. Another example of kind of the concentric circles that I just thought of too is for years I've been doing these projects, particularly or primarily with young people, writing collective manifestos about things. And so just got done writing a collective manifesto for the city of San Antonio by inviting young people to complete the sentence stem, I am for a city that. And so, just some of the things that they share are just incredibly powerful. But
Yeah.
now what we're doing, right, is looking at a city and like, what is a city made of, And so breaking it down from there. And so we're launching a whole new collective manifesto that is about schools. So I am for a school that, and this collective manifesto will be written by young people and then, right, activated in before their school boards and activated in the community as a way to call us all to live into that which we believe. So, or
Yeah.
that which we believe should be happening in our communities.
Yeah.
So,
That's so cool.
yeah, it's like breaking it down,
Yeah.
So,
So, as I said at the top of the podcast, I feel like when I think of an artist, I think of someone like you who's gotten to work on a variety of different projects across a lot of different mediums. Is there anything you regret doing as an artist? Like that you wish you hadn't maybe even like wasted time on, or, like
Yeah.
whatever the thing
Yeah.
is?
I think that there is something, and that is, I think there was a while that I thought that I couldn't change things once I put them out in the world. And so like an example of that is that refrigerator project that we were talking about. Like it was actually called for a long time, You Are What You Eat. And that was kind of like a working title. And it like, right, it went out in the world and won some great awards, and it started getting a lot of traction. And I never really was in love with the title of that work. I think it was like an important way to get people to engage with like thinking about how food and food systems are a part of ourselves and how we're all integrated into that. But I wanted to change the title of it, but I was like afraid to because it had already gotten so much traction, you know? And I was like in my mid 20s, and I think there was a point that I wanted to just change it to refrigerators. Or there was other aspects of the project that I wanted to change too, but I thought that I couldn't change them, right? Because I thought that people would think, oh, this guy's flaky or this guy's this or that, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think it was one thing that took me a while to learn of that, like, you can change your mind, you can change a direction, and you don't have to necessarily always listen to what's going on outside, but follow that thing inside of yourself.
Question. Here we
Yeah.
go. For me growing up, I didn't have a lot of access to artists.
Hmm.
And I always thought of like museums seeing, Picasso or
Oh,
whoever on
yeah.
the wall. I would always just think like, how do you even get to this point? Do you have to die? Basically, you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, enjoy me while I'm living, please,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you're someone who's gotten a lot of art projects funded.
Mm.
Are there any tips, tangible takeaways you can give to people who are maybe coming into the arts or making a transition like you did, and like things of how to navigate that
Yeah,
space?
definitely. I think my brain just like went out into like a fork, right? So there's kind of two ideas that I would have. Is that one is to like remember that this is like relationships are incredibly important, and like investing in relationships, like that's like the long haul game, you know. And so, right, it's not always about just finding a small like chunk of money to fund something that you need to do tomorrow, but it's about trying to find people that are like-minded, like-hearted, and really understand your practice and what you're trying to do, and building a long-term relationship with them. And because you never know where that's going to go.
Yeah.
So many of the like larger like pockets of funding that I've had have come from really unexpected collaborations with people, and money has often come from outside of the arts, right? From people that would never fund like a traditional art project, but maybe would fund an education project, or a group that would fund like work against capital punishment, but they would never fund like an artist, just like a normal artist practice. And so I think for me, I found that investing in relationships that are similar in that you have similar goals and similar ways of thinking and being in the world is really important. And then I also think that, right, I've applied for so many grants, y'all. Like, and there was about 2 months ago, I got 5 rejections in 1 week. Like, literally 5, y'all. Like, I mean, it was crazy. 5. I mean, I was just like, oh my goodness. I was like, I suck. I was like, nothing's going to ever happen again, you
Yeah.
know? But I think that there are things that you can apply for to get money, and I think with that it's really kind of trying to get underneath what you're trying to do, right? It's not just about making a set of photographs or making some paintings or doing that, but it's like, but why are you really making the work that you're making, and trying to be able to communicate that. And then I think having somebody look over it, having a trusted person that can put another set of eyes on it for you to make sure that it makes sense, right? Because so often we have these projects or these things in our heads that we can like dream up, and we see it, and then we put it on paper. And we're like, of course, everyone, this is the best idea ever, of course. And then somebody may read it and be like, oh wait, I'm not making this connection here. So I
Yeah.
think it really, really helps that once you get that passion out onto the page, is to get somebody to look over and make sure that it makes sense before you hit submit, right?
Totally.
So for that.
I know, like for me, for example, getting the residency, the Adobe
Mm-hmm.
residency, which the application video, I'll link it in the show notes and in the description box. I literally put my entire application up online.
Yeah.
I put my entire application online so that way y'all could see, like, here is what an institution like Adobe is looking for in an application. And also so you can see, like, you really, to your point, you really have to have a very firm understanding of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like I know with my residency, for example, a big thing that Adobe wants is for you to be in the community, and so every aspect of my project, aside from the web series, which is like comedy and fun or whatever, every other aspect of my project is about being in the community,
Yeah.
doing stuff with Adobe products. And it's not necessarily about the Adobe products themselves, but more about like, I'm hopefully enabling you to go and create the art you want to make. A lot of times with these organizations, when I see grants and things like that for artists, a lot of them are about like, how are you as an artist engaging with your community in an interesting way, or in a way that's going to get youth to think more, or get people to think more about their neighbors or what else is happening around them. So
Yeah.
try to see how you can flip it and reverse it to make it be
There you go.
community minded.
You know, it's interesting too. I think that like a lot of the times, like I think of the term like lifting the veil. You know, it's like how do we lift the veil of some of these processes, right? And I really respect you so much for putting all of that online, right, so that people can access it and learn from what you did in order to get the residency, because it can be so, right, if you're just looking at it and you've never experienced something like that, it can be really intimidating, or it can be like,
Yeah.
oh, these people, like, how the heck are these people even getting that? So breaking
Yeah.
it down, you know?
Yeah.
And it also makes me think of another thing too. I often like to think of like that of my toolbox, right? I have all these different tools inside of there, and some of those are like technical skills, so like using a camera or editing, but so also inside of that toolbox is like how I tell my own story, or how I can synthesize information, or like all these different tools that I have, and we can gain tools from different places, and you can share tools. And I love thinking about the term tool because it's never assumed that you know how to use a tool the first time that you have it, right? You have to practice with it. You got to
Yeah.
use it, you know. And then once you know how to use it, you can put it away and then pull it out whenever you need it. You can always add to your toolbox. You can share tools. You can give them away.
Yeah.
So many different things.
And I love that you mentioned having like building relationships. There's like a specific, like, I think it's like a sociological, anthropological term of like the nuclear family, right?
Yeah.
So you have your, what is it? I think we're at 2.2 kids now,
Two-
officially.
Like per family,
Yeah,
2.2.
2.2
exactly.
or
It's
something like that.
7 or something.
Yeah.
No.
But something that I found really interesting is like, you know, you have in the United States, you have this idea of the nuclear family where you have, your family has a hammer, and your family has a car, and your family, and it's all just for this one family. Whereas if you think more community minded, you can have a hammer, but you're not going to use it all the time. You don't need it every day. So maybe you give it to your neighbor to use for a little while, and then they bring it back. And then maybe they have a garden, and you can get some food from them, and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. And like thinking that way. And I think thinking that way about your art is really important. Y'all know so much that I collaborate with Evelyn a lot. Right. And a lot of that is because of proximity. She's
Yeah.
very close. She's in Austin, and I'm here in San Antonio. We're like an hour and a half apart from each other. And also because we've been friends a long time. And like, you know, there was a project that Evelyn did that this was right when she was starting to get a little bit bigger on her channel, where she wanted to do a project, but she wanted to have drone footage. And I had just bought a drone. And keep in mind, I had already been talking to Evelyn back, and this was back when it was the Mavic. It was like when the first iterations of the Mavic Pro came out. And I had already been talking to her like, oh my gosh, drones are like under $1,000 now. I'm about to invest in one. This is back when I had an agency job, so I had a little bit of money.
Yeah.
But it was like, I'm about to invest in one. I'm going to buy it. She was like, okay, cool. As soon as I had let her know I bought it and showed it to her, she was like, I'm going to hire you for a video now. And so together, we were like, and that video, I still get referenced because of that video so much. And it's just because her and I kind of like figured out if we can combine what we have, our knowledge, our skill sets together and help each other out, you know, rising tide raises all ships. Try to see who, and try not to come at it from like, what can I get from you?
Yep.
But just like, how can I amplify you and then you amplify me and vice versa? I feel like that's such a big thing when collaborating with other artists and finding connections.
Yeah.
Like so huge.
How do we invest in the creative community around us, you know? And I think it's like we always talk about investing in tools in the studio or stuff like that, but I think it's a great reminder for us, right, of how do we support the practices and people and their lives around us too.
Yeah.
It reminds me as well that, you know, like this doesn't happen all that often, but sometimes I'll be like at an opening or have an exhibition and people are like, how do you do this? Or how do I get a show here in San Antonio? Or how do I have this? And I'm always like, well, you know, what places are you going to that are having exhibitions? Like what openings are you going to, right? Now, this is mostly pre-pandemic, right?
Right.
Talking about that.
Yeah.
But because I think it's like, right, you become a part of a community, and it's not like some people will just show up and they expect to get opportunities just by showing up, or, just by being there. And it's not, it's about building those relationships. And it's like, oh yeah, if you want to be a part of the arts community or that stuff, like be part of it by showing up and supporting other people's openings and other people's practices, and asking people for studio visits and sharing their work and being interested in what they're making. And again, those relationships then begin to build out of that place. But yeah, that question of like, oh, well, when was the last opening that you went to besides the one that you're at now?
Yeah.
It's sometimes a good indicator of the ways that we're spending time. And it's hard, right? We're all juggling multiple different things
Of
to get out
course.
and do that. I got kids and all these other stuff, so I get it, but making that a priority is important.
Nice. Which brings me to like another point, was just like exposure, going and seeing different artists like work a lot. I know for me, yeah, I'm in the realm of film and video, but I spend a lot of time, like when I see that the McNay has something open, just a local museum here in San Antonio, really great one. If I see the McNay is having a new showing, or I see this, like someone else is doing something, or like, especially, I recently did hopscotch here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so all these crazy, just, involved art experiences. You can get so many ideas and inspiration, or they can just make you ask more questions. So I'm a big fan of just like exposing yourself. And then if funding is tight and you can't afford to go to a lot of those places, which I completely understand, then the big thing is like, the internet is chaotic neutral.
Yeah.
It is a chaotic neutral. It is not chaotic good or bad. It's just in the middle. So you have to decide how you want to use the internet.
Yeah.
If you want to I oftentimes use the internet to see a lot of art.
Yeah.
And expose myself to art that way for free.
Yeah.
So that's my big thing too.
And there's a lot of free places to go around town, whether that's, and you can always find those places, or they have free nights, like I think even the McNay, like on Tuesday nights, or, every third Thursday, I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, I
right?
forgot something like
but
that.
there's, lots of different ways that those institutions are making their spaces accessible to the community as well. It could always
Yes.
be better, but
Yeah, it could always be better,
Yeah.
but they're trying.
yeah.
I wish we could be like how it is in Jolly Good London Town, where it's just like most of the national museums, you just walk in. Like you just go and
just
walk
go in.
in, and you're
Exactly.
just in.
Yeah.
Granted, it's all stolen, but
Yeah.
you get to walk in. Anyway,
Yeah.
had to say it. All right,
Yeah.
so as we wrap up,
Yeah.
as we conclude, any I'm trying to like make sure that you've gotten to say everything you want to say potentially.
There's one other thing that I think that I would share that kind of goes back to, I don't want to say that it's advice, but something that I found incredibly helpful for me, especially, 15 years ago. I had somebody share with me one time, they said, I think we were talking about like getting things done or how much we're doing. And they just said, well, can you do like 3 things a year, like 3 projects a year, no matter what scale? And I was like, yeah, I think I can do that. It's like one like every 4 months.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, so like if you do 3 things a year, right, that after your first year, you've done 3 things. After your second year, you've done 6 things. After your third year, you've done 9 things. And if you think about it, like in 3 years, I did 9 projects. You're like, oh, dang, yeah, like that seems pretty good. And I think for me, it was this great way of remembering that like what I need to do is show up and make the work, right? Just
Yes.
work, and make the work. But like it's like things grow exponentially, right? So it's like I have to just like keep my head down and kind of do that and not get caught up in this thing of like, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? But just to kind of continue making that 3, 6, 9, right? After 4 years, that's 12 projects. And so, but to think about kind of breaking it down into these smaller chunks.
That's really good advice. And I would piggyback on that by saying, try to document your process of how you're doing stuff as much as you can. I know for me in the moment, I'm really bad about doing like behind the scenes. Here's how I did this or whatever. I'm super bad about that because I'm just so in it,
Yeah.
very present when I'm supposed to be for the work. Otherwise, my head is like next week. But
Yeah.
when I'm filming, pretty present. But if you can try to remember to, document your process as much as possible, because I know for me, a lot of times I've gotten the next project, because the film came out and then I showed some process, whether it be like on Behance, for example, or something like that, just putting some things out so people can see how you make it and what your process is like. That's such That's like very invaluable information, not only for yourself, for like journaling yourself or
Yeah.
figuring out what has worked for you, what hasn't, but also so people can see that, like, you know, unfortunately, I think we are in an age where you have to like be on the internet in some way,
Yeah.
you know, unless you got established before the internet.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to try to like have a little blog where you put a little bit about how you got to the finished thing and have some of those sketches or,
Yeah.
you know, a photo of yourself painting, something like that, so people can see that you are indeed doing things, but not being like showboaty about it, you know, just trying to find a way to show that you did stuff.
And keep up with your hard drive management, your file management. Seriously, that's a practical. I have like 4 hard drives and 3 computers, and I'm working across all of them. It is not good, y'all. Stay organized. So,
Definitely. Okay. Well, thank you so much,
thank
Mark,
you,
for
Hallease.
having
It's so
us.
good being with you. Thank you for being here. Thank y'all.
Okay.
So.
That's it. Oh, bye. I really enjoy talking to Mark because, again, he is just someone that I feel like has gotten so far in his career so quickly. But as you listened or watched, he goes through setbacks and hangups too, just like the rest of us. And I think the biggest thing that resonated for me from the conversation is how he chooses a medium that works best for an artistic piece he's working on. Not everything is meant to be on a wall. Sometimes things are meant to be in a community space, or just thinking differently about ideas around curation. I think I always just come away with so much more talking to Mark. If you've never seen any of Mark's work, I will link to his website and his Instagram in the show notes and in the description box. Definitely check him out. He is someone to follow. Again, in the comments below, if you're watching here on YouTube, let me know how you felt about the exercises. Did they spur any type of emotion for you? You know, having this idea of wanting to zoom and enhance on a specific moment in your life or a specific location. How did that make you feel? Or was it kind of like, this isn't enough for me. I still feel like I'm not that interesting. That's not true, by the way. That's not true. But if that's how you felt, let me know in the comments below. Again, this is the Trying to Be Somebody podcast. I'm Hallease, endeavoring to persevere. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time with me and my guest. I will see you in the next episode.
I'm just trying to be somebody to make a way.